The entire auditorium erupted in cruel laughter as 17-year-old Emma Mitchell walked onto the stage wearing her father's oversized blazer and shoes held together with duct tape. The spotlight hit her face, and for a moment, she looked exactly like what they all thought she was, just a janitor's daughter who didn't belong. But in 60 seconds, every single person in that room would realize they had witnessed something that would change their lives forever. Emma had spent 17 years being invisible at Lincoln High School in Cedar Falls, Iowa. While her classmates arrived in brand new cars and designer clothes, Emma walked 3 miles each morning, carrying her belongings in a backpack her father had found in the Lost and Found. Her father, Robert Mitchell, had been the head custodian at Lincoln High for 15 years, mopping the same floors his daughter walked on, cleaning up after the same kids who made her life miserable. The irony cut deep every single day. Emma's classmates would drop their trash carelessly in hallways, knowing someone else would pick it up, never realizing that someone was her father. They complained about the school being dirty while her dad worked 12-hour shifts to keep it spotless. They treated the maintenance staff like they were invisible, never knowing that every cruel comment about the janitor was a knife in Emma's heart. Emma's mother, Catherine, had been a music teacher before she died in a car accident when Emma was 14. Music filled their small apartment above Murphy's hardware store. Catherine would play piano while Emma hummed along, creating melodies that seemed to float through their tiny home like captured sunshine. But when Catherine died, the music died with her. Emma couldn't bear to touch the old piano that sat covered in their living room, and she hadn't sung a single note since the day they lowered her mother into the ground. Robert worked extra shifts to keep Emma in school, taking cleaning jobs at other buildings on weekends. Emma would often find him asleep at the kitchen table at midnight, still in his work uniform, paycheck calculations scattered around him like broken dreams. She watched him sacrifice everything for her education, knowing that every dollar he spent on her school supplies was a dollar he didn't spend on himself. The bullying at Lincoln High was relentless and systematic. Jessica Parker, daughter of the town's mayor, led a group of girls who made Emma's life their personal entertainment. They would knock her books out her hands in the hallways, dump milk on her lunch when teachers weren't looking, and post photos of her on social media with captions like "Poverty Looks" and "When your dad cleans toilets for a living." Tyler Crawford and his football team friends would block Emma's path between classes, forcing her to take longer routes and arrive late to her lessons. They would imitate her father's walk, pretending to mop floors while making exaggerated gestures about how pathetic it was to be a custodian. Emma learned to eat lunch in the library, hide in bathroom stalls during passing periods, and walk home the long way to avoid confrontation. The worst part wasn't the bullying itself. It was watching her father pretend not to notice. Emma would see him cleaning the hallways when she was being tormented, and their eyes would meet for a brief second. She could see the pain and helplessness in his expression, the way his shoulders would slump when he heard students laughing at his daughter. But Robert never intervened, knowing it would only make things worse for Emma. Instead, he would leave little notes in her locker. "You're stronger than you know," or "Mom would be proud." Small gestures that kept her going on the darkest days. Emma found refuge in her part-time job at Miller's music store downtown. Old Frank Miller, who had known Emma's mother, let her work there after school in exchange for minimum wage and access to the store's instruments. Emma would clean and organize inventory. But when the store was empty, she would run her fingers along the piano keys, remembering the melodies her mother taught her. Sometimes, when she thought no one was listening, she would hum quietly, her voice rough from years of silence, but still carrying echoes of something beautiful. Frank noticed Emma's musical instincts immediately. He would watch her naturally gravitate towards certain instruments, see how her fingers found melodies without conscious thought, observe how her whole body seemed to relax when surrounded by music. He began leaving songbooks open to specific pages, hoping to encourage her sing, but Emma always closed them quickly, the grief still too raw to confront. The announcement about Lincoln High's annual talent show came during morning assembly in late February. Principal Williams stood at the podium explaining that this year's show would be different. It was a fundraiser for new music equipment, and the winning act would receive a $1,000 scholarship. Emma sat in the back row, watching her classmates get excited about their upcoming performances, knowing this was just another event she would skip. Jessica Parker immediately began planning an elaborate dance routine with 6 backup dancers and custom costumes that cost more than Emma's father made in a month. Tyler Crawford formed a band with other football players, despite none of them having musical experience. The wealthy kids started hiring professional choreographers and vocal coaches, treating the talent show like another opportunity to display their privilege. Emma overheard conversations in the hallways about expensive equipment rentals, professional sound technicians, and elaborate stage setups. She realized that even a school talent show had become another arena where money determined success. The scholarship that could change her life was realistically only available to students who could afford to compete for it. That evening, Emma mentioned the talent show to her father while they shared a dinner of mac and cheese and canned vegetables. Robert's eyes lit up in a way she hadn't seen since before her mother died. He told her about Catherine's dream that Emma would one day share her voice with the world, about how her mother used to say that Emma had a gift that could heal people's hearts. Robert pulled out an old video camera and showed Emma a recording from when she was 13, just months before Catherine's death. In the video, Emma was singing a song her mother had written, her young voice pure and powerful, filled with emotion and technical skill that seemed impossible for someone so young. Emma watched herself on that tiny screen and saw a girl she barely remembered, confident, joyful, unafraid to take up space in the world. But the grief was still too strong. Emma shook her head, explaining that she wasn't that person anymore. She had tried to sing after Catherine's death and found only silence where music used to live. The bullying at school had convinced her that she was worthless, that people like her didn't deserve to dream big. She thanked her father for believing in her, but said the talent show was for kids like Jessica and Tyler, kids whose parents could buy them success. Robert didn't argue, but Emma noticed him watching her differently over the next few days. He would hum Catherine's favorite songs while cleaning, leaving the old piano uncovered in their living room, placing fresh flowers next to Catherine's photo every morning. He was trying to fill their home with reminders of the music that once defined their family. The deadline for talent show registration was approaching, and Emma tried to ignore the excitement building throughout the school. She focused on her classes and her job at the music store, telling herself that staying invisible was safer than risking public humiliation. But something was changing inside her, a restlessness she couldn't quite identify. One afternoon at Miller's music store, Frank played a recording of Catherine's favorite aria, a piece she used to sing around the house when Emma was small. The melody hit Emma like a physical force, bringing back memories of her mother's voice, her gentle hands guiding Emma's fingers across piano keys, the way music used to make everything else disappear. Emma found herself humming along before she realized what was happening. Her voice was different now. Deeper, richer, carrying the weight of loss and the strength that comes from surviving pain. Frank stopped what he was doing and listened, his eyes filling with tears as he recognized the echo of Catherine's gift in Emma's grown-up voice. When the song ended, Frank told Emma something that would change everything. He explained that her mother had left a letter with him before she died, with instructions to give it to Emma when she was ready to sing again. With trembling hands, Emma opened the envelope that had waited 3 years for this moment. Catherine's letter was a love song written directly to Emma's heart. She wrote about how music wasn't just entertainment. It was medicine, it was hope, it was a way we remind each other that beauty exists even in the darkest times. Catherine explained that Emma's voice was a gift meant to be shared, not because she owed the world anything, but because the world needed what only she could give. The letter contained sheet music for a song Catherine had written specifically for Emma, a piece that told the story of finding light in darkness, of choosing courage over comfort, of understanding that our deepest pain can become our greatest strength. Catherine had somehow known that Emma would need this exact message at this exact moment in her life. Emma spent the next week learning her mother's song, practicing in secret at the music store after closing time. Her voice was rusty from years of silence, and there were moments when emotion threatened to overwhelm her completely. But with each day of practice, she felt something awakening inside her, not just her voice, but her sense of self, her right to exist fully in the world. The night before the talent show registration deadline, Emma made a decision that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She would enter the competition. Not because she expected to win, not because she thought it would solve all her problems, but because her mother's letter had reminded her that hiding her gifts was another form of giving up. When Emma submitted her registration form, the secretary looked surprised to see the janitor's daughter signing up. Word spread quickly through the school's social networks. Jessica Parker posted on social media about how desperate some people were for attention, and Tyler Crawford made jokes about Emma probably planning to sing while mopping the stage. The bullying intensified in the days leading up to the talent show. Students would mock applaud when Emma walked by, asking if she was planning to sing opera while her father cleaned up after her performance. Someone put a fake flyer in her locker advertising an evening of custodial arts featuring Emma Mitchell. The cruelty was designed to make her withdraw from the competition. And for several moments, Emma almost gave them what they wanted. But every time she considered quitting, Emma would think about her mother's letter, about her father's quiet sacrifices, about the girl in that old video who sang with such fearless joy. She realized that backing down now wouldn't just be letting the bullies win. It would be betraying everything her mother had hoped for her. The night of the talent show, Lincoln High's auditorium was packed with families, teachers, and students. The lighting was professional, the sound system expensive, and the energy electric with anticipation. Emma sat in the back corner of the backstage area, wearing her father's old blazer over a simple dress she had bought secondhand, her shoes held together with duct tape but polished to a shine. She watched as act after act took the stage, each one more elaborate than the last. Jessica Parker's dance routine featured pyrotechnics and costume changes that cost more than most people's cars. Tyler Crawford's band had hired session musicians to make them sound professional. Every performance reminded Emma of how different she was from these kids, how little she had to compete with their resources. When her name was called, Emma walked onto that stage carrying nothing but her mother's song and 17 years of stored-up emotion. The audience's reaction was immediate and cruel. Laughter erupted from the student section. Phones came out to record what they assumed would be a humiliating disaster, and she could hear Jessica Parker's voice above the rest, making comment about Emma's appearance and her father's profession. Emma stood at the center of that stage, spotlight blazing, facing down the collective mockery of everyone who had ever made her feel small. For a moment, the laughter seemed to grow louder, more vicious, more designed to destroy whatever confidence she might have scraped together. But then Emma saw her father in the back of the auditorium. Robert was supposed to be working, cleaning up after the earlier performances, but he had stopped everything to watch his daughter. Their eyes met across that crowded room, and Emma saw something in his expression that gave her the strength to continue. Not just love or pride, but absolute faith in who she was becoming. Emma closed her eyes and began to sing. The first note that came from Emma's throat was pure and powerful, cutting through the laughter like a blade through silk. The mockery died immediately, replaced by stunned silence as everyone in that auditorium realized they were hearing something extraordinary. Emma's voice was rich and controlled, carrying technical skill that years of training couldn't duplicate and emotional depth that only real pain could create. The song Catherine had written was perfect for Emma's voice. It started softly, building in intensity, taking the audience on a journey through loss, hope, struggle, and ultimate triumph. Emma sang about being invisible, about watching from the shadows, about discovering that sometimes the most beautiful voices come from the most broken hearts. As Emma sang, something magical happened in that auditorium. Students who had spent years ignoring her suddenly saw her clearly for the first time. Parents wiped away tears as they realized they were witnessing something rare and precious. Teachers stood in the wings, recognizing that they had failed to protect a student who carried this much beauty inside her. The song reached its climax, and Emma's voice soared to heights that seemed impossible, notes so pure and strong that they seemed to come from somewhere beyond her physical body. She sang about finding courage in the darkest moments, about understanding that our greatest gifts often emerge from our deepest pain, about the choice to shine even when the world tries to dim your light. When the final note faded, the silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Emma stood on that stage, vulnerable and exposed, having just shared the most intimate parts of her soul with people who had spent years treating her like she didn't matter. Then the applause began. It started with one person in the back row, then spread like wildfire throughout the auditorium. People leaped to their feet, cheering and crying simultaneously, recognizing that they had just witnessed something that would stay with them forever. Emma's classmates, who minutes earlier had been mocking her, now stared in awe and shame, realizing the depth of their cruelty towards someone with such extraordinary gifts. Jessica Parker sat frozen in her seat, understanding for the first time that all her privilege and popularity meant nothing compared to the raw talent and courage she had just witnessed. Tyler Crawford and his friends looked at each other with confusion and guilt, recognizing that they had spent years tormenting someone who possessed something they could never buy or fake. Emma found her father in the crowd, and Robert was crying openly, his face shining with pride and love and vindication. He had known all along what his daughter was capable of, had believed in her through every moment of doubt and darkness. Now the whole world could see what he had always known, that Emma Mitchell was extraordinary. When the talent show results were announced, Emma's victory was unanimous. The judges had never seen anything like her performance, and the audience's reaction made their decision effortless. Emma won the $1,000 scholarship, but more importantly, she had won something that no amount of money could buy: respect, recognition, and the knowledge that her voice mattered. The aftermath of Emma's performance rippled through Lincoln High School like an earthquake. Students who had bullied her approached with awkward apologies, realizing too late the damage they had caused. Teachers who had overlooked her began paying attention, offering opportunities and support they should have provided years earlier. Jessica Parker publicly apologized on social media, admitting her behavior had been cruel and inexcusable. She used her influence to shut down the bullying culture she had helped create, becoming an unexpected advocate for kindness and inclusion. Tyler Crawford quit the football team to focus on music, inspired by Emma's courage to pursue passion over popularity. Emma's performance went viral when someone posted it online, garnering millions of views and offers from record labels and talent agents. But Emma wasn't interested in fame for its own sake. She wanted to use her voice to help other kids who felt invisible, who believed their dreams were too big for their circumstances. The scholarship money allowed Emma to attend the State University's music program, where she studied vocal performance and music therapy. She returned to Cedar Falls every summer to perform benefit concerts, raising money for scholarships for students from low-income families. She established the Catherine Mitchell Foundation, providing musical instruments and lessons for kids whose families couldn't afford them. Robert retired from custodial work when Emma graduated college, finally able to pursue his own dreams with his daughter's support. He opened a small business teaching music to elderly residents at nursing homes, combining his gentle nature with the musical knowledge Catherine had shared with him during their marriage. Years later, when Emma performed at Carnegie Hall, she dedicated her performance to every kid who had ever felt invisible, who had been told their dreams were too big, who believed that where they came from determined where they could go. She sang her mother's song that night, the same piece that had transformed her life on a small-town stage, proving that the most powerful voices often come from the most unexpected places. Emma's story reminds us that talent doesn't discriminate based on wealth or status, that courage isn't about feeling fearless, but about singing through the fear, and that sometimes the people who seem the smallest are actually the strongest. She learned that our greatest gifts often emerge from our deepest struggles, that the voices the world needs most are sometimes the ones it's tried hardest to silence. The girl who was once invisible had become impossible to ignore, not through seeking attention, but through sharing the authentic truth of who she was. Emma Mitchell proved that you don't need perfect circumstances to create perfect moments, that sometimes the most beautiful songs come from the most broken hearts, and that the stage you're given is always big enough for the voice you're meant to share. In a world that often judges people by their circumstances rather than their character, Emma's journey shows us that extraordinary gifts can be found in the most ordinary places, that real talent shines brightest when it's authentic and vulnerable, and that the courage to be yourself in a world that rewards conformity is the most radical act of all. The janitor's daughter had found her voice, and in doing so, she had reminded everyone who heard her that we all have songs inside us waiting to be sung, dreams that deserve to be pursued, and gifts that the world is waiting to receive. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of courage to transform not just your own life, but the lives of everyone who witnesses your truth.